A California serial scamming tenant was finally stopped and sent to prison for fraud. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's coming out of the great state of California, specifically out of Silicon Valley, California. And it has to do with a tenant, a professional tenant. Right now, this person is a serial scammer. And I've talked a lot about these serial scammers, how they move into someone's unit, right? And then they basically stop paying rent, knowing the eviction laws within the area. They're able to stay for free for months, if not years on end, especially in California, where the tenant protections are so strong. They make no exceptions for scammers, and they screw landlords over. This is part of the reason why I've always said I would never ever be a landlord in California, because I fear this sort of thing happening. So this tenant actually was arrested, charged with a crime, sentenced, and sent to prison. Now, this is a pretty rare thing, okay? Most of the time they tell us, oh, well, you have to go after this person with the civil courts, and that's the only option we have for recovering our money and this, getting any sort of justice, right? So it is nice to see that even in California, every once in a while, if it's egregious enough, they will actually go after a person. So yeah, this tenant going to prison, and I'll let you know for how long in just a moment. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. First, my question for the landlords on here: have you ever had a scammer tenant move into your unit? Basically somebody who paid just the first month of rent, the security deposit, and then immediately stops paying and just is doing everything they can to stay in your unit for as long as possible. Now, obviously, I live in very landlord friendly place. I invest in landlord friendly places, so this scam would not work on me for more than like a month before I'd have them evicted and up out of my property. But I know a lot of people who watch these videos are in places like Washington State and places like California, New York, New Jersey, where the scammers can really drag the eviction process out and stay up in your unit for months on end, if not years on end. And I'm just curious if anyone else on here has ever dealt with that situation before. So anyway, let me get into the article. This article is coming from KTVUFox2.com, and it says, tenant repeatedly scammed landlords to live rent-free in expensive parts of Silicon Valley. So yeah, when they say that this tenant was living in expensive parts of Silicon Valley, remember, all of Silicon Valley is extremely expensive to live in. So I'm imagining that these houses were $1 million plus easily, okay? And they probably weren't even that nice. But anyway, let's see what the article says. Menlo Park, California. One woman has been able to live in Silicon Valley's most expensive areas rent-free for the past decade, and now she's been convicted of it. Santa Clara County officials said Rebecca Violet, also known as Rebecca Violette, scammed local landlords into renting their homes to her by writing bad checks for the first and last month's rent, and then subsequently refusing to pay rent when caught. So yeah, sounds like she's obviously a professional tenant, right? So she would write the landlord a bad check, right? Which I've had bad checks written to me before, and it kind of sucks because you don't find out until after you deposited it. The money might even look like it's in your account, and then you'll come back later, oh, this is a bad check. And then you know what the bank does? They charge you a cost for having a bad check or depositing a bad check into your account, like you did anything. Like, hey, thanks for this, right? And so obviously that's a big issue. So how do we protect against that from happening? My thing would be, okay, except I don't know exactly how we could, can you accept the first month's rent and the security deposit, and then it has to be like a couple weeks later before they move in, just so you can make sure that the check clears. There has to be a way, you know, like if you can think of a way to get around that bad check thing, put it in the comments. But my real question is, how did these landlords not know that this lady was a serial scammer? You know, like, you should have been able to run her records pretty easily and come up with, oh man, she's got a bunch of evictions on her record. Oh man, her credit is crap. So, you know what my thought is? They probably didn't run her, okay? They probably didn't run her records at all. They probably are small mom and pop landlords who own maybe like one house and didn't run her through the regular tenant screening like a more professional landlord would. And they paid the ultimate consequence because of it. But she might have been able to pick her targets out, knowing that, hey, this is the easiest way to get up into these properties. I am going to find this small landlord who only owns one property. This might be their first and only rental, and I'll be able to scam them a lot easier than I would to scam, you know, Tony over here, who, you know, has owned dozens of properties, who, you know, has been a landlord for more than a decade and doesn't play any games, okay? This would force landlords to go through the lengthy and expensive eviction process to have her forcibly removed. Renters and landlords should all be cautious. Anyone could fall victim to a well-honed scheme, District Attorney Jeff Rosen said. We encourage careful background checks before renting to anyone. Violette was sentenced to 2 years and 4 months in prison. Yeah, so I think the district attorney kind of gave a good clue there of the situation. It's like what I said, okay? We encourage good background checks. By not doing a background check on a tenant, you're basically leaving yourself open to becoming a victim. That's just the truth, okay? We all know that. The people watching this video, they know that. I think that if you're watching this video, you probably have some experience as a landlord. You're like, yeah, I've been screwed over too many times to not be running background checks on people, okay? Now, that's exactly what happened to me. You know, some of us, we have to learn the first time, but if you're trying to learn in a place that's not a landlord-friendly state, well, guess what? You could have a tenant up in your unit for years while you're paying all the bills. Does that sound like fun? It doesn't sound like fun to me, but like I said before, I wouldn't invest in California or, you know, Silicon Valley or any of this mess in the first place. But it's not the first time she has done this. Officials said the 62-year-old has a history of pulling the same scam and has served several stints in prison for it, even though she was previously sentenced to jail for doing the same thing back in 2014. According to the Mercury News, that didn't stop the Menlo Park woman from fooling a few more unsuspecting landlords. The newspaper previously identified Violette as a real estate agent in earlier reports. So this lady has already been to prison for this. This is her scam. And when she gets out of prison in a little over 2 years, actually it won't even be that long, because usually what happens is, you know, you're parole eligible after you serve like half the sentence. So she's going to do probably a little over a year in prison, be out, be scamming another small mom and pop landlord who probably is not doing the background checks like they should be doing. And so, you know, all I can say is look out, be careful. If you're watching this video and you're a small mom and pop landlord, you haven't done background checks, there are easy ways to do it. Now, follow your laws in your local area. I'm gonna say that right now because, yeah, it's legal for me to do background, you know, criminal history checks, credit checks, to call employers, etc. But in some cities and some states, they actually have laws where landlords can't do that. So follow your, you know, find out your local and state landlord tenant law and follow it, okay? But if you are able to do those things, do it all, okay? Call their employer, check their bank account information, do everything you can. Do not just rent your place without being able to verify the tenant who that is actually in there is who they claim to be. You know, get a copy of their driver's license. You know, like I had copies of all my tenant driver's licenses. You know, that, I mean, I need to be able to verify your identity. So I'm like, yeah, let me see your driver's license. And if they're not willing to give it to you, well, you know what? I can find another tenant who will give it to me. So move along. Okay? Anyway, I'll put a link to this article in the description down below. You let me know what you think, okay?